Well, this is a really unique set of negotiations, because if you imagine when two countries or two trading blocs come together to negotiate, they kind of have in mind the type of agreement they're negotiating. So when the UK or when the EU negotiates with America, they know it's going to be some kind of free trade agreement. We don't know even what type of agreement this is going to be. So the options are, it could simply be a completely novel agreement that does things that each party kind of agrees upon. You know, a treaty is like a contract. You can do pretty much what you want. It could be a free trade agreement like ones that already are out there. For example, between the EU and South Korea, or between the EU and Canada. These are similar sized countries to the UK. If we take Prime Minister May at her word, she's saying hard Brexit. So no single market, no customs union, and no jurisdiction of the Court of Justice. That therefore excludes the most simple option, which is that Britain joins something called the EEA, which is like what Norway has. If, on the other hand, we get an agreement with the EU that mimics that, the question will be, then why did we bother leaving? So to answer your question, the initial stages will be taken up, each side trying to figure out exactly what the other one wants and is willing to give. So definitely the issue of migration, free movement of people, will be key. If I was an EU negotiator, I'd want to say to my British counterparts, why don't you guarantee the position of EU migrants in the UK if we do the same thing? That would be the initial kind of argument, but everything's interlinked. Now, if you're going to negotiate a far-reaching free trade agreement, what you do is you start industry by industry. That's kind of how they function. But then again, most free trade agreements have very little to say about the free movement of people. So again, that adds a different dimension. I suppose that kind of supports what I was saying before, is that this is not going to be an 18-month process. As we've excluded the EEA, which would be the simplest thing to do, but obviously Prime Minister May doesn't want it. So the 18 months is there'll probably be an agreement to agree, and some initial issues will be resolved, but nothing more than that. It is entirely possible that there is no agreement. So it's not obligatory on the UK to have an agreement, and it's not obligatory on the EU to have an agreement. We know from the EU's chief negotiator that they're only going to negotiate for 18 months, because then they want to give the European Parliament time to scrutinise the deal. Most trade and EU experts would agree that a comprehensive trade agreement between the two sides will not be achieved in 18 months. So there is a mechanism in Article 50 whereby if everyone agrees, so literally all 28 countries plus the European Parliament, we extend that deadline by whatever period of time.
Does that mean that there is turning back from the points that are agreed on the negotiations?
That's a really good question, because in the recent Brexit case before the UK Supreme Court, the government conceded that there is no possibility to come back and revoke the decision to leave. Some people would query, and I'd be one of them, to query whether or not that's accurate. The British diplomat who helped negotiate Article 50 believes it is revocable, so we can go back on it. If you apply general principles of international law about how you interpret treaties, a treaty, a notification to leave, is revocable if everyone agrees. So if all 28 countries agree that Britain, if it decides to revoke Article 50 notification, there is a good argument to be made that it is not a permanent step. The gain will be, I think, that the nature of the EU will be much better known to everyone, all across the EU, because this is going to be big news. And I think part of the problem with the Brexit debate that we had in the referendum was how ill-informed it is on both sides. So the great thing will be, out of these negotiations will come some actual education, that everyone will know a bit more about what the EU does or did for us, and the future generation coming through still has the option of changing its mind, 10, 20 years from now, or even sooner. So I think that will be a really good positive, because the discussion so far has been ludicrous and really basic.